Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session of Manavutsav. As you can see, that we are in a different space today, and today we have got with us a very special guest, who most of you are known or have worked with, Zinthiya Ganeshpanchan, and she is she is part of RSA, but she has got a charity which does multiple levels of work, isn't it? You've got like so many different things going on at the moment, but we'll come to that in a minute. So what we're trying to do is through the Manavutsav platform, we're trying to connect with different organizations who are making a difference, helping to build Leicester, because we are planning to have an eye museum to celebrate the work and people in Leicester in the future. And of course, this is mostly a series that is going to build up to that point. And some of the important, I would say, or eminent personalities we have in Leicester, we're trying to get in touch with them first to understand the difficulties, the work that they are doing, or difficulties that they are facing, and how we can actually reach out to more and more people to ask for more help to mitigate that gap. So a very warm welcome this afternoon. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much for
and good
giving us time.
afternoon.
I know you are quite busy at the moment, and if you let us know a little bit around the work that you're doing at the moment. You know, I know that you have got big funding and you have been working on a huge project to make a change in the city.
Yes, so we've been awarded some money through the Community Renewal Fund, that is to work with women and women who've been either long-term unemployed or who are looking to upgrade their skills or go into self-employment. So that is the big project that we are working on at the moment. But as an organization, we continue to work with women and girls fleeing abuse, but also working with families to prevent poverty, which is quite distressing these days, because we all know that due to the increasing cost of living, increasing energy prices, and things like that, there's an awful lot of people who are struggling to make ends meet. So we continue to support those people in our community.
Do you think that problem is getting deeper, or is it like?
So unfortunately, yes, because in like during COVID time, like if you take our organization alone, the numbers were increasing. But then we thought in the aftermath that there would be some form of relief. But unfortunately, then came this economic crisis and the cost of living crisis, and so I think the demand on the services are increasing, which goes to show that there's lots of people out there who's struggling to find like solutions to their day-to-day problems.
And like you mentioned about the homelessness, and
Yeah.
we've heard that, you know, in Leicester, of course, I mean, homelessness has been an issue, particularly in Leicestershire. That's fine. Take your call. Oh, yeah, that's fine. So in Leicestershire or Auckland, you know, we had these issues where children have been living in temporary accommodations, families have been living in poverty, and there are projects who are actually working on it. But what have you seen on the ground?
So homelessness is quite complex. Now, I think when we talk about homelessness, most of the people immediately imagine the people living on the streets, or like if you walk in the city center, there will be a couple of people living on the streets in the evenings, mornings. So I mean, then people think that is homelessness. Yes, that is a part of the problem. But I think what we've seen is the hidden homelessness. So that means there's a majority of people who don't sleep on the streets because they simply don't have a place to sleep or spend the because they don't have a home. But they sort of sofa surf, maybe living with friends, families, or in insecure accommodation or overcrowded accommodation. And those are the kind of challenges. So we're seeing more of that. But also there's an awful lot of people, because they can't pay their rent, or in rent areas, are being evicted or at the risk of becoming homeless. So, I mean, that is some of the challenges when we talk of homelessness. And you're right, yes, there's a lot of people, young people, women, children living in insecure accommodation, in emergency or temporary accommodation.
And so, do you work in that kind of areas?
So
And you
we continue to work, and that's something that will be done all the while. But then, because we work with women fleeing abuse, we see the challenges women face with regards to homelessness. Because if you take the high street and if you take the number of people who are homeless, the majority would be single men. But for women, on the other hand, that we work with, the challenge is they would not sleep on the streets, but they would be in insecure accommodation, either living with friends, families, sometimes with strangers when they have exhausted all means, or living in very like temporary accommodation or very substandard accommodation, where sometimes 3-4 families live in the same home because of the cost of housing, and then in refuges and things like that. And in our own temporary emergency accommodation, currently we have about 13 women and 12 children. So that is, being a small agency, we have to provide that kind of support, but that is the reality for many people.
So how much support do you get from other organizations, or do you have to, or is it more you doing
So wherever possible, we work with other organizations. I mean, so we sometimes refer people to other organizations, but even those organizations are struggling because the sector, I mean, the third sector is struggling. And because there's lack of funding, there's lack of infrastructure and things like that. So most of the agencies are the demand is high on the increase, and we all are sort of working towards meeting those demands, but which are sometimes over beyond our capacities.
Yeah. And so do you think that this issue of homelessness or the problems that you're dealing with has aggravated due to the pandemic? So that is that.
It can be, yes, there were problems before the pandemic. I think the pandemic is a part of the problem, but I think what happens is the economic climate after the post-pandemic is also contributing to this.
And is it because of the business and the issues that we're like inflation, like
So, like
of other
the cost of,
things.
say, for example, if you take the property prices, they're on the increases. So that goes, and then rent has increased. Private rented accommodation types. Sometimes people have to spend more than what they are earning towards the rent, and then even with what they get through their housing benefits, sometimes it's not enough. So they have to pocket out the remaining, and that is going to eat into their costs. But then salaries are not inflation. The salaries are not meeting those increases. And most of the people, cost of living has gone. Like now in October, like gas, electric prices are going to go up by about 78%. So that's going to have major repercussions on the people who are just earning a fixed monthly salary, or some people who are even unemployed or who are in unsecure income.
Yes, yeah. Like you were saying, I think if I'm not wrong, that before when we had a conversation that you're doing like skills training as well, isn't it, with people? So what are the kind of training that we are making at the moment?
We focus mainly on women and young people or people with a disability. So we give, we develop skills through employment and through volunteering or work placements. But we also run training programs such as like building confidence, building IT skills, and things like that, which we believe that will support some of these people to go back to work, and even if they don't want to work, at least they can go on to setting up their own business or whatever they choose to do. Because sometimes if we take women, for example, employment is not the solution for everyone, especially if you have caring responsibilities, if you have children, and if you have low skills or you don't have those employable skills. Sometimes employment cannot be a choice. So then maybe supporting those women and girls to do what they are capable of, or maybe running a business from their home. It can be simple things such as maybe hair and beauty or handicrafts or whatever they would like, and whatever they can do within those given restrictions.
Yeah. So you and in doing so, you're working at the very micro level, isn't it?
We work at the micro level,
very.
yes. So I think as an organization, that's what we've always focused on, like working at micro level, because that can be. We all know that the local becomes the global.
That's right. Yes, that's very powerful, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like when you look at the history of change, you'll see that small changes did actually contribute to the bigger picture.
To the big picture.
But apart from Leicester, of course, you do a lot in Leicester. But apart from that, you also have got a very, worldwide sort of reach, and where you do many things. So, what are the kind of projects that you run?
So again, I think most of the work that I've been doing focuses around women and girls, and that has been true to Leicester as well as beyond. So currently, I am working in Sri Lanka, in Nepal. But then before pandemic, we were trying to work in other parts, but then the pandemic hit and we had to put some of our plans on hold. But mainly in Nepal and Sri Lanka, again supporting women-led organizations to build capacity, and then working with schools, libraries, and and on general welfare, because currently Sri Lanka is facing a massive crisis. But then equally work on period poverty, because again that's a challenge. So those are the kind of work that we do.
Fantastic. So, it's coming from the big picture to a very small, but I'm just curious, like, how much time does all of these take from your day to day, in your day? How much
It
does it
takes an awful
consume?
lot of time, but
Yes.
every day is not the same. They're different. So some days like you can manage to get whatever you plan to do, but then there's some days that everything goes. Especially if you see, like, if you come across an emergency case of like woman free abuse, and if you have written, then your plans go out of the window. So, but that's what it is to be working in the sector.
And what do you think, as a result of how you are dealing with your daily life and your work and balance and all of that, what would what one message, if I ask you, that you would like to give out to the younger generation, especially the young girls who are now just standing on the brink of entering that job area?
So I think for me, what I have learned is, I think, not to have too much of expectations in life, in the sense, because I think quite often especially we as women, we are told that we have to have a work-life balance. We have to choose between. Sometimes we have to choose between our career or like being a good wife or a mother or whatever. So, and there are lots of expectations placed upon us. And then when we can't fit into those stereotypes, then you have other, like, you suffer from mental health, depression, because you feel inadequate. But I think for me, what I've learned over the years is uh, there's nothing called work-life balance. You just give it your 100%, and then what comes out of it comes.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Oh no, that's again something very powerful. So it's like, what you're saying is that as you work along, you figure out how you want to do and what's best for you, rather than thinking about
Don't try to fit
society.
into somebody's
Yeah.
like somebody's stereotype, because that only puts additional pressure on you to conform to certain things. Just be true to yourself. That's all that matters.
Fantastic. Yeah. And so, what are how are you aiming to take your charity work and the work that you're doing forward? Like, what are your things that you think you have not achieved yet and you want to achieve?
So I think for us, I think given if you think of the work that we're doing in Leicester, there is a lot of work that I mean, we have to do more of what we're doing today, because that is where the need is. We've identified what we do are right, like addressing the need, but then the challenge is to do more of it, because there's more people in need. With regards to the overseas work, I think again it's the same, because the problems that we're trying to work, like domestic violence, period poverty, women-led like capacity building, those are challenges that we will have for the next couple of years or generations. So just taking one day at a time, is and doing what the best that you could do.
So, have you thought about student volunteering in your projects?
From time to time, we have had student volunteers, especially I think from the social care side of it, because that's what we do. And we are open to student volunteering, because we could do with extra capacity. But when we look at students or any form of volunteering, what we want is the commitment. Because it's no good giving us a couple of hours if there's no commitment. But then it's an additional burden, because you have to focus. So because training people and supervising people is an additional task.
Yes.
So, and if you don't have the commitment, then it's very difficult to do that.
Yeah. That's right. Yes. Yeah. Because sometimes what we can also do is, in academia, we are thinking that because of the industry connection, because of some of the skills that our students will need, going into before they join into the workforce, they might need some training from the industry setup, from working with charity. So that is something that can be embedded in the curriculum as well going forward.
Yes. So I think recently I was talking to somebody who told me that I don't know which university, one of the two universities, no longer offering the community development program.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a massive shame, because I think students have to be. Because often I have students coming to me and saying we want to work with homeless people. So when I ask them, for example, when I ask them what do you want to do with them, or we want to teach them how to write a CV. So that itself shows that they're not very. They don't understand, because one thing you have to understand is the people, just because they're homeless does not mean that they're not educated, or sometimes they might be well-to-do people. Like I know there's one scientist. I know the gentleman because I've been He was before COVID. He used to come to our organization, but then he was suffering from mental health, and now he's become homeless. So people like that. So I think understanding the sector is important for anyone who's coming to this sector, because it is not an easy sector to work with. Because, like I said, even I was having this discussion a couple of hours ago with someone. We might, like on a 30-day month, we might have 25 bad days and 5 good days. But it's those 5 days that keeps us going for the remaining 25 days, because it is tough, it is challenging. And if you don't come to the sector with the understanding or with the passion, then you can't do the work that we do.
Yeah, that's another
because
thing.
because there's so many people coming from the corporate sector. It's not that they're bad people or not that they have skill. It's just that you don't understand the setup, and because we are not. I mean, like when I say we, I mean people in the sector. We're not well paid, or we don't have the facilities that what you would get in main corporate organizations. But yet people put up with all that because they have the passion. And if you don't have that, then it's difficult.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think on that note, we'll bring this to a close. But I think that it's a very powerful sort of 15-20 minutes discussion that we had today, particularly looking into the work of yours, but also I think that going forward we can work in a more collaborative manner to see how, like you were saying, student commitment, which can be something that we can focus on, like looking into how we embed that in the curriculum and say, well, if you go and work 5 hours, then you get something out of it as well, So that needs to be there, otherwise it becomes a bit difficult.
Yeah, it's become difficult because sometimes if you come only to have something on your CV, it doesn't help that way, because then you have plenty of other jobs that there who could put skills that you could get. But if you have real commitment, if you really want to understand the people and how people's lives and what is society about, then I think it's a good way to go about.
Fantastic. So thank you very much for your time indeed,
You're welcome.
and giving us this precious time. I think you're very busy, of course, but thank you very much again. And we will promote this, and once we have got the link ready, I'm going to send it to you.
No problem.
Bring it out.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.